Luke Cage, whose birth name is Carl Lucas, was born and raised in Harlem, New York. In his youth, he was into the gang life, and eventually, he and his best friend, Willis Stryker, would run their own crew. Luke was known for being good with his fists, and Stryker his blades. Together, they were unstoppable. As the two grew older, Luke had no desire to die in the streets, so he left the gang life. Stryker, however, was just getting started. Although they weren't as tight as they used to be, they were still friends. One day, while Luke and Stryker were catching up, Luke's co-worker, Reva Connors, caught Stryker's eye. Luke was reluctant to introduce them due to the fact that he had eyes for her as well. With Stryker's fast lifestyle, he had the money to outshine Luke, but his fast lifestyle had a downside. One night, when out with Reva, Stryker crossed rival gangsters and was attacked. Fearing for both her life and Stryker's, Reva ran for help and happened to find Luke. After Luke would save his friend's life, Reva would confess to Luke that she saw what life would be like with Stryker, and it terrified her. When she tried to end things with Stryker, he took the news hard. He blamed Luke for putting things in Reva's head while he was recovering in the hospital. "I ain't forgetting this. You're gonna pay, backstabber." It took time for Stryker to keep his word, and in that time, what had been nothing between Luke and Reva became something until they were talking marriage. But Stryker was always watching, always waiting. One night, when Luke arrived home after work, he was met by police. They informed him that they received a tip stating he has drugs with the intent to distribute. Luke, knowing he was clean, allowed the officers to search his home. Unfortunately, they found large amounts of heroin stashed throughout his home. The officers informed Luke that the tip also stated he moved the drugs from Miami to New York, so it became a federal trafficking charge. That, on top of his past juvenile record, got him 15 years at Seagate Prison, aka Little Alcatraz. While in prison, Luke learned that not only did Stryker plant the drugs found in his home, but the drugs themselves were stolen, and the gang that Stryker stole from sent enforcers to take him out on sight. Lastly, Stryker had got back in Reva's good graces under the guise of clearing Luke's name, putting Reva's safety at risk. This would anger Luke, and as a result, he had a hard time adjusting to prison life. He would attack his cellmate and eventually the guards. These acts would land him in solitary confinement. After weeks in being inside the box, a guard named Court, who despised Luke, couldn't wait to read him a special letter. The letter stated that one night, while Stryker and Reva were out driving together, the enforcers finally caught up with him and fired multiple shots inside the vehicle. Reva was killed instantly, but Stryker would survive the shooting. This would be the first appearance of Luke Cage in the Marvel comic universe. Being released from solitary confinement, 3 days past he was due to be out, after learning that the love of his life was murdered, and the man who set him up was still living free. Around this time, we meet Shades and Comanche, who wants Luke's help in causing a ruckus for the new incoming warden. Luke tells them to kick rocks and punches Comanche in the mouth for pulling a blade on him. After this confrontation, Luke is brought before Captain Rackham, who is acting warden. He informs Luke that he saw the skirmish in the courtyard, and that someone with his current record, that could be another trip to solitary confinement. Rackham would then propose that Luke keep tabs on Shades and his crew. In exchange, his life would be a lot easier at Seagate. Luke would turn down this offer, which deeply insulted Rackham. Rackham would have Luke thrown back in solitary confinement, and would tell Officer Court, "You always talk about breaking that punk. This time do it, any way it takes." To the shock and horror of the other two guards, Quirt proceeds to beat Luke mercilessly. They pleaded with Quirt to stop, stating that the entire prison can hear what's going on, but it fell on deaf ears. Unbeknownst to the entire staff, the new warden, named Stewart, would arrive at the prison a day early than he was expected to see how the prison really operated. He would hear the suffering of Luke and even witness Quirt in the act. Sickened by what he saw, he fired Quirt on the spot and gave Luke 10 minutes alone with the guard in the cell. For his poor management skills, Stewart demoted acting warden Captain Rackham to a regular guard. Angered by this, Rackham would plot his revenge against Luke. After Luke is back in general population, he is approached by a Dr. Noah Bernstein. This doctor seems to have an unusual interest in Luke's ability to withstand pain and recover from injury. The doctor would visit him quite often, and when asked why he was receiving such attention, the doctor replied, "I've got a medical project I started that requires a unique breed of man, and I have a silly hunch that you could fit the bill." The doc would go on to tell Luke that the results of this project could benefit mankind, so volunteering for this project would impress the parole board. The only catch is that there's a chance the procedure could kill him. Luke would initially reject the offer, but after dealing with a demoted Rackham, he quickly changed his tune. Dr. Bernstein would then bring Luke to the electro-biochemical system. It was designed by Stark Industries for stimulating human cell generation. If successful, it can counter the damages of almost any disease, even aging. Dr. Bernstein would tell Luke that to truly test the machine's ability, he would have to infect him with a disease, to which Luke refused. The doctor would remind Luke that this act will look good for his future parole hearings. Then he would add that Luke was selected because he was the healthiest and strongest man in all of Seagate, so he had the best chance of coming out fine. Luke would eventually agree and step inside. Once the vat was sealed, the doctor revealed that he had to go check on the machine's sensors in another room, leaving Luke vulnerable. As soon as the doctor left, Rackham would enter the room with revenge on the brain. He would then proceed to twist a random dial on the machine, causing the electro-biochemical process to soar to levels it was never meant to attain. As the doctor re-entered the room, Luke was enveloped, but didn't drown in the whirling tide of chemicals. Luke's skin was searing to the point where he could take it no more, so he began to frantically hammer at the sides of the vat, causing the machine to explode. As the smoke cleared, there stood Luke, unscathed. A panicked Rackham would then pull a pistol to shoot Luke, on the grounds that Luke was trying to escape. Luke, fearing for his life, would merely smack Rackham across the face. What seemed like a light blow knocked Rackham out cold, as though he was hit with a hammer. The doctor would check on Rackham and tell Luke that the officer was in bad shape. Not only did the experiment literally blow up in Luke's face, but now he could face life in prison if Rackham dies. Frustrated by the turn of events, Luke would punch the wall with surprising results. Amazed by the damage he caused, Luke would continue to punch and punch and punch until he was outside of the prison walls. Unfortunately for Luke, Seagate was built on an island, so he only made it to an edge of a cliff by the time the guards caught up with him. Realizing this was the end, Luke would pick up a rock and charge at the guards, only to be met by a savage roar of gunfire. Luke, believing he would soon die, let his body fall off the cliff into the ocean. But to his surprise, he came back to the surface in perfect health. There were only bruises where the bullets hit. The doctor's experiment worked far better than he could imagine. Luke concluded that he was now bulletproof and possessed superhuman strength. The guards would inspect the point at which Luke fell, and all they found was his prison shirt covered in bullet holes. Believing the convict to be deceased, the search was called off. Luke will eventually make it to the mainland and journey back to New York City. Once there, however, he needed money and a job. But since he was a dead convict with no ID, no such luck. One night while Luke was passing by a diner, a gunman came running out of the front door with a bag of cash. Luke would ask the man why he was running, to which the man would reply by shooting Luke point blank in the chest. Luke would end the confrontation with a swift backhand, sending the gunman flying out of the issue. The owner of the diner was so grateful for Luke's help that he gave him a cash reward. This would give Luke an idea on how to make a living. Shortly after leaving the diner, Luke would visit a costume shop. His goal was to appear as a superhero when using his powers. While browsing, he came across the now iconic yellow and blue costume, once belonging to an escape artist. Luke would then visit the grave of his fiancée, Reva Connors. It was here that he dropped the name Carl Lucas and became Luke Cage. Luke keeping a little bit of the Lucas and Cage to remind him of how he felt caged in prison. Luke vowed to Reva that under this new name, he would avenge her death and take down Willis Stryker. Luke would then print up some business cards that read Luke Cage, Hero for Hire, and distribute them amongst the neighborhood. That way, he could use his powers and make some cash while plotting his revenge. Luke's actions would cause worry to the criminals of Harlem, especially one named Willis Stryker, who now goes by Diamondback. It didn't take long for Diamondback's men to find Luke. They would inform the Hero for Hire that their boss had enough and wanted him to stop. Luke had no plans of stopping, so the goons decided to eliminate him. After realizing that bullets had no effect, Luke would relieve the two men of consciousness. Soon after the tussle, Luke was approached by Dr. Claire Temple. She had witnessed the confrontation and wanted to check Luke for wounds. Shocked that the bullets only bruised Luke, she would insist that Luke follow her to a free clinic that she co-ran for further treatment. While approaching the clinic, Claire saw that the lights were on and the front door was wide open. This was odd to her because the clinic was closed. Once inside, the two could see the place had been completely ransacked. Further inside, pinned underneath a filing cabinet, was Claire's clinical partner, Dr. Noah Bernstein. To Luke's surprise, Bernstein didn't seem to recognize him, even though only a year had passed. Claire would suggest that the clinic hire Luke's services to prevent future break-ins. Bernstein said he'd think about it. Luke would acquire an office space to give his business a little more clout. Not too long after, Luke would be contacted by Bernstein, asking him to come to the clinic. Luke was on edge, believing this was the doc's way of turning him in to the authorities. Upon his arrival, however, it is revealed that Dr. Claire had been kidnapped by Diamondback's goons. Bernstein said they wanted Luke Cage or they'd kill Claire. Luke would then go to the disclosed location, only to be ambushed by Diamondback and two of his men in a car. After surviving the attack and saving Claire, Luke would then give chase to Diamondback. After catching up, Luke would reveal to Willis that he was Carl Lucas of old. Willis was dumbstruck, believing that Luke had died in prison. Diamondback would quickly strike, temporarily incapacitating Luke with a knife that emitted sonic waves. After a small skirmish that brought them to a rooftop, Willis would try and end the fight with his explosive rigged knife. Due to a misstep, however, Willis would fall through a sunroof, followed by his knife that detonated on impact with the floor. Luke finally got his revenge, even though it wasn't the way he had planned. Although Luke got his revenge, there was still the fact that he was an escaped prisoner. Bernstein, remembering who Luke really was, would say he wants to do the right thing. The doctor wished Luke would have taken Stryker alive to help clear his name. Luke would respond, "I didn't, so he can't. What's your next move?" Bernstein would reply that he doesn't see any other choice but to turn Luke in. He believes in the law and that they can find a legal way to clear his name. Understandably upset, Luke would say that without Willis, they have nothing. Laws, just like your experiments, Luke would explain, are beautiful as long as they work. Only for me, neither of them did. I lost a hunk of life in a cage and became a freak. The doctor would reveal to Luke that when he thought Luke died, he gave up such experiments. He knew he was in part responsible for what Luke had become, but wished Luke wasn't selling his abilities. Luke, having heard enough, tells the good doctor that the cops can find him at his office and proceeds to leave. Bernstein would then backtrack, criticizing himself for being self-righteous when Luke would be the one going to jail. Bernstein promised Luke that he wouldn't turn him in as long as he didn't exploit his powers for evil. Luke didn't seem too pleased, comparing the doctor to a parole officer. If that's your game, you're welcome to play it. I got better things to do. Months passed, and Luke's business had started to pick up some momentum. This would catch the eye of a Daily Bugle reporter named Philip Fox. While out on an assignment, Luke is approached by Fox. He tells Luke that he's heard about his Hero for Hire business, and he wants to tell the world his story. Luke wants nothing to do with it, for fear that the reporter will unearth his past. Before leaving, the reporter would tell Luke that he wouldn't give up that easy. Weeks later, Bernstein would inform Luke that he had been contacted by Mr. Fox. The reporter told the doc that he wanted to do a story on the free clinic, but if he digs into his background, he'll dig up his past experiments, which would reveal a certain prisoner who was involved, Luke. Bernstein assured Luke he wouldn't speak to Fox, but that wouldn't stop the reporter from snooping. Luke's skills and ability would attract the attention of Dr. Victor Von Doom, who would in turn hire Luke's services. To summarize, 4 androids escaped from Dr. Doom's kingdom of Latveria and fled to the United States disguised as black men. They did this because in Latveria, there aren't any black people. Doom wasn't welcomed into the United States, so he needed a black person to find them and destroy them. Luke didn't like it, but figured Doom had the right to hire his services like anybody else. Luke would eventually find the droids and a battle ensued. Luke was pushed to the limit, but he was the victor. When Luke returned to Doom's US hideout to collect payment, he learned that Doom left the country soon after the androids were destroyed. The doorman would add that Doom pays no money when he can avoid it. Not one to be messed with, Luke vowed to find a way to Latveria and get his payment. Luke would decide to break into the Baxter building. Why? Because the Fantastic Four is known for having rockets capable of making it to Dr. Doom's kingdom. Naturally, the Fantastic Four didn't like having their base broken into, so a battle ensued. They eventually stopped once Mr. Fantastic recognized who the intruder was. So you're Luke Cage. I read about you in Phil Fox's column. He says you make your own rules, but you're honest and honorable. Phil Fox can climb a tree, Luke would reply. All that counts is that Dr. Doom owes me money and I'm collecting. Mr. Fantastic admired Luke's spunk, so he agreed to loan Luke a rocket. Luke would make it to Latveria, and with the help of an android rebel army, Luke was able to breach Dr. Doom's castle and found him inside. Luke would simply ask Doom, "Where's my money?" Doom was beside himself. He couldn't believe Luke came all this way for $200. "I put in an honest day's work, and I expect my bread for it," Luke would reply. Doom refused to pay, so the two began to throw down, Luke getting the better of Doom, damaging his armor. A rebel saw this as an opportunity to kill Doom, but Luke, not having gotten his money yet, would save Doom's life. Doom would thank Luke and tell him that he earned his respect, which is more difficult to obtain than his money. Doom would pay Cage the $200 he owed him and tell him to leave and never return. Holding true to his word, Phil visits the clinic constantly, trying to find out more about Luke and Dr. Bernstein's relationship. On this particular visit, however, Bernstein wasn't in, so Claire sends Fox to Bernstein's office to wait for him. Naturally, while in there, Fox begins to snoop around. Fox is in luck when a locked drawer in Bernstein's desk happened to be unlocked. Inside, he found a notebook titled Records of Experiments at Seagate Prison. Fox is happy that he finally found a lead, but it is short-lived once Luke entered the clinic. He was able to put the book back before being seen and left. After the clinic was closed, Fox would break into it and then break into Bernstein's drawer, stealing the notebook. Fox would learn everything from Luke being a convict named Carl to the experiment that changed his life. Phil would try to sell this info to J. Jonah Jameson, but he didn't want any part of it, believing it to be fake news. Fox, not one to give up, would think to himself, writing a story only gets me headlines, but suppressing a story might get me a lot more. After a long day, Luke would enter his office to find Phil Fox chilling behind his desk. Outraged at the boldness, Luke tells Fox to get out. Fox would reply, "No hurry, Lucas, no hurry." Then, Luke threatens to throw Fox out of the window, to which Fox says, "Hurt me, and you'll be back in Seagate Prison." Cage acts as though he has no idea what Fox is talking about, but Fox goes on to reveal that he knows everything, and tries to blackmail Luke into robbing banks. Luke replies with a backhand to Phil's jaw. Fox would then say, "You'll go back to prison. You've got no choice." "I've got a choice," Luke would say. "Beat you bloody now, or do it if you ever come back." Remember Captain Rackham, who became Officer Rackham back at Seagate? Well, he got fired, and he was in New York looking for a new job. One of the first places he went was the Daily Bugle. While there, he placed an ad offering services as a guard. When asked where he last worked, he said with pride, "Seagate Prison, pal, a real man's prison." This caught the ear of columnist Phil Fox, who happened to be nearby. Once Fox got the man's name, he chased after him, seeing nothing but dollar signs. When Fox finally catches up with Rackham at his hotel, he tells him he's doing a story on prison guards and would like to ask him a few questions. After Rackham agrees, Fox begins the interview. His questions, however, are more about Luke Cage. Rackham becomes suspicious of Fox once he brought up the name Dr. Bernstein, a name Rackham never mentioned during questioning. Fox would come clean and tell Rackham about Bernstein's journal, his new clinic, and reveal that Carl Lucas is still alive under the name Luke Cage. Rackham was overjoyed, seeing this as an opportunity to put Luke back in prison and get his job back. Fox would suggest blackmailing to be a better option, but he stated that Luke wouldn't budge with a direct approach. Rackham would say, "If he don't care about himself, we'll just put the arm on somebody he's close to. He's got a girlfriend?" Fox would mention Dr. Claire Temple and tell Rackham how to find where she lives. As Rackham headed towards Claire's apartment, he happened to drive past Luke's office and spotted him out front with a female. Her name was Mrs. Jenks, a former client. She was seeking Luke's help dealing with a personal issue. When Rackham saw Mrs. Jenks leaving Luke's office, he assumed she had to be Dr. Claire Temple. Once she got into a cab to head home, Rackham followed. On a side note, Shades and Comanche broke out of Seagate for revenge against Rackham, and they too were in New York. When we next see Rackham, he, Fox, and Mrs. Jinx are in her apartment. Fox is freaking out, trying to tell Rackham that this woman wasn't Claire. Rackham states she knows Luke, and Luke still has ideals. Rackham would then proceed to repeatedly hit Mrs. Jinx in the face. As this is happening, Dr. Claire enters Mrs. Jinx' apartment building. Luke was last seen with Mrs. Jinx, and since he wasn't home, she thought he'd be here. As she was about to knock on the door, she could hear two men arguing. It was during this argument that Claire learned that Luke is an escaped convict, and a picture of a battered Mrs. Jinx would be sent to Luke to aid in the blackmail. Inside the apartment, Fox would have a change of heart, stating he was in this for the money, not for the torture of an innocent woman. Claire listened as Rackham pulled out a gun and Fox tried to take it away. Blam! After waiting a few moments, Claire would enter the apartment to see Phil Fox laying on the floor, dead. Mrs. Jinx and Rackham were nowhere to be found. Claire would pick up the gun right as police officers enter the apartment. Luke would soon visit Claire in jail to see why she would kill Fox. She couldn't have visitors, so Cage had to scale the side of the PD to see her. Once he reached her cell window, he demanded to know what was going on. Claire would reveal that she knows he's an escaped convict and told him what happened at Mrs. Jinx' place. Luke would tell Claire to stay strong and that he explained everything once her name was clear. Luke would begin to do some investigating. He learned of the stolen notebook from the doctor, which cleared up Fox knowing his secrets. Luke then talks to a man named Flea, who happens to know everything going on in the streets. Flea tells Luke that he has something to show him and brings Luke to Shades and Comanche's hideout. The three of them try talking Luke into joining their alliance. As a bonus, the group said, their first order of business would be to clear up Dr. Claire's name. When Luke asked how they can help, Shades would say, "We can lead you to the guy who killed Phil Fox." Luke asks, "How is that possible?" And Shades says, "Flea's been keeping tabs on the guy since he first met with Fox." Shades then drops the name Rackham, and at that moment, Luke knew he had no choice. As much as it pained him, Luke agreed. As they left their hideout, they were being watched by a vigilante named Stiletto. Flea's info would lead the group to the suburbs of New Jersey. It is here in some random home that Rackham is hiding out with Mrs. Jinx as his hostage. Before Rackham could react, Cage and friends burst into the house ready for revenge. Outside the house, however, Stiletto decides to bring the entire house down on top of the escaped convicts. After the dust settled, Luke, Flea, and Mrs. Jinx seem to have been the only ones unscathed. Rackham would appear from beneath the rubble and fire shots at Mrs. Jinx. This would cause more debris to fall on him. Flea would then tell Luke to save Shades and Comanche while he get Mrs. Jinx to safety. After everyone made it outside, Luke would have a brief fight with Stiletto, but after seeing he was outmatched, Stiletto would flee. Rackham would somehow survive and try to escape. Hearing the police sirens, however, in the distance, and knowing he would be facing hard time for his crimes, Rackham would throw himself in front of an oncoming ambulance, dying instantly. Unknown to the Alliance, Luke had called the police before heading to Jersey and asked them to tail him. Shades and Comanche were arrested, and Luke stood ready to be taken in as well. But to his surprise, the police merely thanked him for helping catch the prisoners. Shades would whisper to Luke that he wouldn't snitch on the man who saved his and Comanche's life. Luke would later learn that Mrs. Jinx passed away from her injuries, but before she died, she confessed to Fox's murder, allowing Dr. Claire to be set free. Luke would go on to have many more adventures, many of which I will discuss in depth on this channel.